The Republicans are trying to bankrupt America. How is this even possible? They can theoretically do so by not raising the debt ceiling until approximately June. Enacted in 1917, the debt ceiling seems like a shackle on the federal government. Nevertheless, when Congress passed the law during the First World War, it intended to allow the federal government to borrow money more freely, as before 1917, the government required congressional approval every time they borrowed money. Nevertheless, as the role America plays in the world became more important, and as the American government started to engage in more costly actions such as wars and welfare programs, the debt limit had to increase. From 1939 to 2018, Congress has approved the increase in the debt ceiling 98 times. That seems like a lot and kind of worries a lot of people about the fiscal soundness of the American government. In fact, since 2009, America's national debt has almost tripled. How did this even happen? Is it because, as a lot of tough guys in the South argue, Obama and Biden are communists? Most of all politicians, including Reagan and Thatcher, want to spend a lot of money without raising taxes, as they care probably too much about the next election. Reagan, for example, tried to spend about $1 trillion to use lasers to shoot down Soviet nuclear missiles. Nevertheless, there have been a lot of spendings that were vital to the survival of America and the world. Think of the 2008 financial crisis. The American economy, along with its financial system, was on the brink of collapse. Barack Obama and his economic team had to help troubled banks, although their executives received handsome bonuses thanks to taxpayers' money. About a month after becoming the president, he spent $831 billion to stimulate the economy. Joe Biden, who was Obama's vice president, must have wanted to go even more ballistic. He spent $1.9 trillion at the beginning of the pandemic. Some people do think these spendings were not legitimate partly because of today's inflation and cost. Some others simply do not accept the idea that the government should help those who are in need. All these ideas are, well, worth respecting. However, the Republicans in Congress seem to ignore the fact that a sizable portion of national debt grew because of the policies that they, not others, they have pursued. George Bush spent $1.1 trillion in Iraq and $2.3 trillion in Afghanistan.
I'm distressed to hear about the latest suicide bombers in Israel. For those who yearn for peace in the Middle East, for those in the Arab lands, for those in Europe, for those all around the world who yearn for peace, we must do everything we possibly can to stop the terror. There are a few killers who want to stop the peace process that we have started, and we must not let them. For the sake of humanity, for the sake of the Palestinians who suffer, for the sake of the Israelis who are under attack, we must stop the terror. I call upon all nations to do everything they can to stop these terrorist killers. Thank you. Now watch this drive.
All right, you need another. Our new speaker. You right? What? Trying to be talked out of the mug.
See you at church.
Kevin McCarthy, who has recently become the Speaker of the House, said he does not intend defaulting on our debt, as he wants to find common ground on a responsible debt limit increase. But he managed to become the Speaker only after accepting radical offers from the Freedom Caucus, a set of extremely conservative House Republicans. Inspired by the Tea Party movement, they want to cut welfare spending and stop immigrants from freely entering America. Most policies demand spending. Each legislator agrees or disagrees with a certain bill after taking its cost into account. If the majority of congresspeople and senators think the bill is too costly compared to its benefits, they should not have passed it in the first place. Therefore, the Republican Party's attempt to freeze the federal government is a cheap ploy to reverse the legislative process. The Republican Party under Eisenhower and Reagan was honorable. They now say Donald Trump's presidency was stolen. Joe Biden is using this to assault the Republicans. In his State of the Union address, Biden said some of my Republican friends want to take the economy hostage, as they want Medicare and Social Security to sunset every 5 years. As both programs are highly popular among Americans, Biden forced McCarthy to admit he does not want to raise spear. Nevertheless, more ardent Republicans such as Sarah Huckabee Sanders promised to stop Biden and the Democratic Party. Janet Yellen, Biden's Secretary of the Treasury, asserted that failing to increase the debt ceiling to $31.4 trillion would result in economic and financial catastrophe. It is possible to get the gist of what will happen thanks to the Republican Party's disastrous attempt to blackmail the Obama administration. In 2011, John Boehner, then Speaker of the House, and Mitch McConnell, the Senate leader of the Republican Party since 2007, refused to pass the Budget Control Act. They wanted to see Obama cutting spending drastically. After all, think about the Republican Party's resistance against Obamacare. Of course, Obama could have been more dedicated to the negotiation from the very beginning. But that does not justify Boehner and McConnell's decision to disarray the financial markets. The stock market crushed. S&P Global Ratings, the largest credit rating agency in the world, downgraded America's credit rating from AAA to AA+, as America may not be able to repay its debts. One of the reasons America cannot easily reduce its debts comes from the interest it needs to pay. Although they were perfectly aware of this, the Republicans wrecked their country's financial reliability for political purposes so that America becomes obligated to spend at least additional $1.3 billion every year. Fortunately, about 2 days before the bankruptcy of the United States government, Boehner and Obama reached a compromise that would raise the debt ceiling by $900 billion. The Department of the Treasury is trying its best to push the deadline. Yellen has already declared the use of extraordinary measures, meaning that the American government is now squeezing every penny out of its pockets. It also means the government has already stopped spending on several key policies. There is, however, a clear limit. Investors around the world, the rich and powerful investors the Republicans desperately want to defend, will soon panic just like they did in 2011. It is likely that Biden and McCarthy would reach an agreement. After all, the Republican Party needs to keep at least one country to rule. But at what cost? There are few things in politics that are 100% right or wrong, yet everyone will agree that McCarthy is, or at least should be, painfully different from Boehner. Boehner's Republican Party did not blame Obama for derailing train. Boehner's Republican Party did not reject wearing a face mask. Today's Republican Party has gone wrong. America's national debt is increasingly becoming a burden to its future generation. An aging population in times of growing economic disparity is not something that can easily be withered away. That, however, does not mean the Republican Party can jerk 332 million American people and their constitution around. The Republican Party must raise the debt ceiling before it causes any trouble and find a bipartisan way to secure the future of America and the rest of the world.